So you are one of the last Americans standing who loves Mitch Trubisky.
No. I'm one of two, because what you talked about today in your blind resumes, I watched that, and you have completely confused the National Football League world. That was fantastic. I'm telling you, but it's a fact. It truly is, and I really think, Colin, that with Mitch Trubisky, a lot has to do with, and don't put Troy Aikman's numbers up or Terry Bradshaw's the first 4 years. I mean, because they might be worse, and a lot has to do with the system that you're in. And that was my only battle cry in supporting Mitch.
Yeah, and I said this. I was never a huge Trubisky fan, but the Steelers have much better perimeter weapons offensively. Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson. They just got another offensive lineman today. They have a better offensive line potentially than he had in Chicago, and they have a better defense. They've led the NFL in sacks 5 straight years, and they have a better coach in Mike Tomlin. So my thing is, I saw Case Keenum win 11 games in this league when he had the right supporting cast. You can't tell me this Steeler team is better than that Bears team, and he got to the playoffs twice with that Bears team, and you kept telling me, you're like, Colin, he has limitations. There is a way to win with him. And that was your assertion, right?
Absolutely. And I still agree with that. And I watched him obviously every week doing shows in Chicago, and was at training camp. And the first thing that got my attention was, with a lot of quarterbacks, without getting into other names, the intangibles on this kid are A+. And by that, I mean in early, stay late, study it, team guy, humble. I mean, all those things give the kid a chance. And now when you got some ability, I just think it was a bad mix from the very beginning. Matt Nagy did not draft him, and he wanted to run a system that was different, and it just wasn't a fit. But the kid won games when he had chances. And so I think now in Pittsburgh, and you didn't even mention Najee Harris, maybe, all rookie running back that the Steelers have. So the Steelers and Mike Tomlin, they're going to play defense, and they're going to run the ball. And I think it's a great fit for the guy. And whether they draft a rookie, they might be thinking in the back of their mind, the Steelers still need to draft a rookie running back or quarterback, and that's fine. But give Mitch a chance. And and 2 years experience up there playing behind Josh Allen with Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator, running a system helps a lot. Running a system where the quarterback run was a big part of Buffalo's offense with Josh Allen. You know what I mean? So the Steelers are going to have a lot of good film to study of what they believe this kid can do best. I think it's I love it. I'm so happy for this kid.
I said today, if you told me Tua or Trubisky, because of his athletic ability and the ability to move the pocket, I would take Trubisky over Tua.
Absolutely. And the ability, I think, to throw the ball down the field. Trubisky's a lot better athlete than people give him credit for, and he's a tough guy. He's a tough guy. I mean, this kid is so I think it's a good fit. I like it. Like I said, now, I'm not going overboard if the Steelers draft the Willis kid from Liberty. I know they're high on him in the draft. So be it. It's going to take that kid a couple of years to get ready. Let's see what happens with Mitch.
Yeah, and I think something, the Steelers in the front office very well. The other thing is, and you touched on this, Mitch is a Steeler kid. Hardworking, not a big ego. I said this about Big Ben. Ben was a polarizing figure. I made one call today that somebody that knew Trubisky in Chicago, and they're like, everybody loved him. Ben could split locker rooms. He had trouble with Lavian. He had trouble with offensive coordinators, Todd Haley. He had trouble with AB. My guy said, Jay Cutler, polarizing in Chicago. Big Ben, polarizing in Pittsburgh. He's like, everybody loved Trubisky. He feels like a Pittsburgh guy. That's what my takeaway. He works.
Yeah, and that's the way he plays the game. He works and he plays that way. No, I think it's a good fit. I think for the Steelers, they were not going to give away 3 number 1 picks for Deshaun Watson. I mean, that wasn't going to happen. But I tell you what, talking to people back there, they've seen enough of Rudolph, Mason Rudolph. They've seen enough of Haskins. They want to. Ben's gone. Let's have a clean slate and let's move forward. So it's a good, and the offensive coordinator there, he loves the movement stuff. I mean,
Yes.
He did a lot. So that he's not a
Matt Canada.
Matt Canada, when he was at Pitt and he had Peterman there, I mean, they did a lot of the jet sweeps and all that college.
Yep.
Hate to say college stuff, but that's kind of what he did and had success with it. Ben couldn't do that. Let me tell you something. You rush 4 guys against Mitch Trubisky. You look up in your blind resume how many first downs he made with his feet. It's a big number. He'll make plays with his feet.
I want to talk about free agency. Sometimes people say, don't spend too much money in free agency. But here's something interesting. In the last 6 years, the highest spending team in free agency has averaged over 6 years 5 more wins. New England needed production. They bought it. I look at what Denver's done. They went and got Randy Gregory, Russell Wilson. Randy Gregory is a tough block opposite Bradley Chubb. Do you worry, though, when you bring in big personalities, multiple personalities? How hard was it when you were coaching? When you bring in some guy, and by the way, you not only bring them in, Dave, sometimes you pay them more than other guys on the roster that aren't paid yet. Is it hard for a coach to make that, synthesize all that chemistry?
Yeah, the one thing that, and this is my experience now with free agency, and we were there when it all started. They called it Plan B, and then it went to free agency. So yep. I've kind of experienced it all. And the one thing you got to be careful of, most guys that become free agents are free agents for a reason. It never gets talked about, so there's more to the story because the team that's letting him become a free agent, they know more about this individual player on the field, off the field, class, everything about him than anybody else in the league. So I think you really have to be careful, whether it's a great player like a Russell Wilson or Gregory, the guys we're talking about. You got to really be careful with the free agency market. It can divide, if it's not the right guy, it can divide your locker room. There's no question about that. When we were at Dallas, we felt like the one ingredient that we needed to win a Super Bowl, we needed a pass rusher. We had everything else kind of in place, yes. And we went out and we got Charles Haley. And Charles Haley came in for us, and he made the difference. Charles was the difference in us winning a Super Bowl, in my opinion, particularly on defense. We ended up number 1 in the league that year in defense in the whole NFL, and Charles had a huge part of that. But his work ethic on the field was, we underestimated how hard this kid worked. And I just think you got to do your research on him, but you got to keep in the back of your mind, why is this player a free agent? Why is Randy Gregory, why was he a free agent for the Cowboys? Sometimes there's more to the story, but you better be sure, because if they're not the right type of person, they can split your locker room. There's no question about that.
It's really interesting. I talked about this in my rant before we did this, that you can't fall in love with things that have worked before. But you do know as a coach, there are certain recipes that work. And if you go look at Belichick's 5 years in Cleveland, the last 2 years in New England, the year Brady got hurt, and New England before Brady started, the Bledsoe years. Without Tom, he's won 47% of his games. And I think Bill's brilliant. But this is something Rex Ryan said for years. He's like, listen, Brady changes the equation. He's like a movie star in an average script. A lot of those funny movies wouldn't be as funny without Jim Carrey. He made the movie, right? Otherwise, it's a bad, stupid movie. And I look at Belichick. They let Shaq Mason go. They let J.C. Jackson go. Hell, they're not paying Mac Jones. They're right in a division with wildly deep and talented Buffalo. My thing is, listen, I know Belichick can coach. They don't have enough star players, Dave. They got Matt Judon, who vanished at the end of the season. They don't have any perimeter playmakers. What do you make? I mean, hell, they're not paying Mac Jones. Who are they paying?
Yeah, it did surprise me a little bit with the when Jackson got away, because I thought they'd re-sign him. Again, Bill obviously has an opinion on that we're not aware of or we're not privy to. I would just say this, regardless of who plays, and we can talk Mac Jones versus Tom Brady, the foundation of the Patriot way, let's use that, what Bill Belichick wants to do, not turn the ball over, be one of the least penalized teams, be good in the special teams. It doesn't matter who the players are. That formula doesn't change. And I think where coaches get into problems, all of a sudden they get a player that's a great drop back passer and they change their whole philosophy, and then they end up throwing interceptions and it doesn't work out. Where Bill inserts players into the mold that he wants his team to be. And he's done that since Cleveland. I mean, you can back and look. We played Cleveland when he was up there, and I practiced against him. When he was at Cleveland, he came out 3 years in a row to Chicago, to Platteville, to the Bears when I was the head coach of the Bears, and we worked against each other. And it was the blueprint that they were going to do. And you saw that this year with Mac Jones. It was going to be high percentage passes, a lot of screens, run the ball, don't turn it over. One of the least penalized teams in the league. Play good defense. I mean, that's the formula. So Tom Brady was the difference. I remember a playoff game where we lost to him, and I remember Norv Turner called me and he says, "Take a look at this." And I think we had 15 third downs and they had 15 third downs. And our quarterback Jay Fiedler, I think he completed 8 of the 15 third downs, and Brady completed 11 or 12. And it was those 3 passes that made the difference in them getting first downs and winning the game by 3 points. So I think that Tom Brady, a player of his caliber, does make a difference. But my point is this, that Tom Brady played within the framework of the Patriot way. His skill did not meant that even though he could have done more in his mind, he didn't. And so I think that's Bill Belichick. There's a lot of credit. A lot of these coaches will swing one way or another depending completely on the players they lose, and they lose the foundation of what they're trying to build. That doesn't happen in New England. Never will.
Well, I think one of the best pickups so far in free agency was Denver getting Randy Gregory. Like Charles Haley, he can be volatile. So I want to talk about Randy Gregory because I thought with Dallas, Dave, there were moments where he and Micah Parsons were so disruptive to the offensive front. Those guys are just simply too fast for their size for a lot of offensive linemen to get their feet under. Like Charles Haley, he's a volatile personality. So when you got Haley, you had a damn good locker room. You had a way of doing things. When you get a player that can be more volatile, what do you have to do as a coaching staff? Because Randy has had his issues. He's great, but you get a different temperament sometimes week to week.
Well, I think, the player needs to understand that he is going to be scrutinized a little bit closer. And Randy Gregory better go up there to Denver, and he better perform, and he better produce. And Charles Haley figured that out real quick. And when he came to the Cowboys, the film doesn't lie. We would sit in there Monday after a Sunday game, and we put the tape on, and Charles Haley was hanging on the quarterback. It took about 2 games, and everybody was sold that this guy can help us win. And at the end of the day, that's what the players want. They're playing for a ring. So I think that's what Gregory's going to have to do. And I'm sure there's a reason that I said earlier that we're not privy to. Why did Gregory become? And he's had a storied past right there with the Cowboys. A lot of issues off the field. We know the whole circumstances, but there was something that Dallas was not willing to jump on the table for right from the get-go and sign this guy.
Were you ever concerned about a player who had some volatility as a coach? If you would sit down with the GM, what would you say about Gregory? Were you willing to? I mean, Denver is in a tough division. Sometimes you got to take risks. How much influence would you have? What would be the difference between taking a volatile guy and not?
All about his the football side of it. That's what I was always concerned with. Was the guy going to be? How was he with meetings? How was his effort on the practice field? You know what I mean? If this was a guy that was going to be late, we wouldn't tolerate that. I never did. Jimmy never did. I mean, and Charles Haley, hey, he had maybe some off the field issues, But as far as being at practice and working hard in practice, that was not an issue. So I'm assuming, Randy Gregory is that type of player. And so I think from a coach's standpoint, it's all about production. You want guys that are going to produce for you. You want guys that are going to be, be team guys to a degree. But that can get overrated. I mean, if a guy's that good of a player, he doesn't have to be the leader in the locker room. Go out and produce. If he produces for you, you got to find a way as a coach to be flexible enough to get the most. That's coaching. Getting 22 guys to do what they necessarily don't want to do, but they have to do to win. So that's all part. That's why I used to say that's why they give you a shirt and a whistle that says coach on it. Go get the most out of the player, and that's what I see with some of these players. It could be a little bit, like you say, a little bit tough to handle.
The Chicago Bears well. Here's what worries me. Rookie GM, a defensive coach in a league that is increasingly offensive. Should I be worried if I'm a Bears fan? Justin Fields now, probably going to lose Allen Robinson. Offensive line still a work in progress. A defensive head coach. How much, and you know this organization well, are you a little concerned off a turbulent year one about year two for him?
No, I tell you what, this is as encouraged I've been about the Bears organization in years. And let me tell you two things. Number one, the offense is young. David Montgomery, Mooney, the tight end, Komet. The rookie on there. They've got two young offensive linemen, and I think they're going to be players. They are a young offense, Justin Fields. And the problem that the Bears would have had, if they keep all these veteran guys, the Danny Trevathan and the Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
In 2 years, when the offense reaches the peak of a championship level play, the defense would have been old or out of contracts. So I love what they're doing. They are saying right now, you know what? We are going to go young. We got a young football team. We're going to draft young players. We're going to coach young players, and we're going to bring this whole franchise to the top at the same time. I think that's smart. The second thing, why I love a defensive head coach, he understands the importance of running the football. And three of the coaches that they hired on offense, Luke Getsy was on my staff at Pitt. Andrew Janocko, their quarterback coach, was a backup quarterback for me at Pitt. And David Walker, their running back coach, who they hired, was with me 6 years at Pitt. They all get the running game, and they understand it. It's going to be the best thing that could have happened for Justin Fields. Is Justin Fields going to be a great player? I don't know. We all hope so, but we're going to find out, because he's going to be in an offense now that truly gives him a chance to be successful. They're going to run the ball. They're going to play defense. They're going to play field position. And in my mind, that's what a young quarterback really needs till he gets his confidence and until he gets his swagger a little bit. So we're going to find out, because Justin Fields is going to get the best chance in this system with these coaches to be successful. So I like what they're doing personnel-wise, and I like what they're doing philosophy-wise. I really do.
I would have thought you hated the Khalil Mack move. You like pass rushers.
I do, but between Khalil Mack last year,
Quinn,
I'm just going to use Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, and Cohen, the little running back that they let go. Between those three guys, they played 3% of the snaps, 3% of their plays. Because of injuries. It's age, it's injuries. It's time to move on. New regime, new coach, new energy. You got to do it. It's time to move on, and I'm all for it. I hope I love Khalil Mack. I hope he has a great year with the Chargers. I really do, and all these other guys. But get those young guys in there and build this team together.